It started with a letter. A plain white envelope, no return address, was sitting on my kitchen counter when I came home from work. I lived alone, and my front door was locked. I hesitated for a moment before I reached for it and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It wasn't handwritten, everything was typed neatly, as if from a machine. The note read, "Tomorrow, at exactly 8:32 a.m., you will spill your coffee. Don't let it stain your shirt." That was it. No explanation, no signature, just a simple warning. I laughed it off. Some prank, I thought. Nothing to worry about. The next morning, I went through my usual routine, grabbed my coffee mug, poured in the hot brew, and then, just as I was about to take a sip, my hand twitched. The coffee slipped from my fingers, splashing onto my shirt. 8:32 a.m. I froze. The chill running down my spine wasn't from the spill, but from the timing. It had been exactly as the letter said. A coincidence, maybe, but how could it be? The second letter came the following day, this time waiting for me on my nightstand when I woke up. I felt the paper before I even saw it. The note inside read, "Today at 3:45 p.m., you will hear your name. Do not answer." I didn't know what to think. It sounded absurd, but the last letter had been eerily accurate. So, I went about my day, trying to forget it. But at 3:45 p.m., while I stood in line at a coffee shop, I heard it, my name, spoken softly but clearly. "David." I spun around, heart racing, but there was no one behind me. The shop was crowded. I rushed out of there, abandoning my coffee, my thoughts racing. My breath came in shallow gasps as I fumbled with the door to my apartment, locking it as soon as I was inside. This wasn't a joke anymore. Someone was watching me. Someone knew things about me, things they shouldn't know. The third letter arrived that night. I didn't find it until I went to bed, tucked under my pillow as though it had always been there. The note was simple, but it chilled me to the bone. "You have seen me before. You just don't remember." I couldn't sleep after reading that. Something in my gut told me that whoever was behind this wasn't going to stop. They were playing a game, and I was the target. The next few days were a blur of confusion and dread. Each letter came with its own unsettling prediction, something small at first, like a knock on my door at exactly 10:15 a.m., or the sound of my phone ringing with no caller ID, but they all came true. Always in precise detail, always at the exact time predicted. And then, it started to escalate. The fourth letter was waiting for me when I returned from work one evening. This one wasn't typed like the others. It was written in uneven handwriting, scrawled frantically across the paper. "Tonight, you will see me, but you won't know who I am." I had no idea what it meant, but my stomach twisted as I read the words. The warning was clear, something was coming, and I wasn't prepared for it. I tried to ignore it, but as night fell, the feeling of being watched only grew stronger. The shadows in my apartment seemed deeper, the quiet more oppressive. At 11:03 p.m., I was sitting on my couch when I heard it, a soft tapping, like fingernails against glass. The sound was coming from my bedroom window. I froze, barely daring to breathe. The window was on the second floor, so how could anyone have gotten there? But the tapping continued, rhythmic and persistent. I stood up slowly, my feet heavy with dread. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my body refused to move. I crept toward the window, my hands trembling as I slowly pulled back the curtain. There was nothing outside, just the dark expanse of the street below, quiet and empty. But the tapping had stopped. I backed away from the window, a cold sweat breaking out on my skin. I thought about the letter, "You will see me, but you won't know who I am." The words replayed in my mind. What did it mean? Who was I supposed to be seeing? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something crucial. The fifth letter arrived the next day, much sooner than the others had. It was waiting for me when I came home, lying on my kitchen table. This one was simple, but terrifying. "You are closer than you think. Don't ignore the next step." What step? I had no idea, but I felt the walls closing in on me. I had to figure this out. There had to be some kind of clue, some hint buried in the previous letters. But the more I thought about it, the less sense it all made. I couldn't trust myself anymore. Everything felt wrong. I began to doubt my own memories. I couldn't remember the last time I had gone to the store, or the time I'd gotten a haircut. Simple things that I should have known, but now seemed distant and unclear. I was losing myself, and the more I tried to find answers, the more I felt like I was being pulled deeper into something that I couldn't escape. I couldn't take it anymore. The letters, the whispers, the feeling that something was stalking me, it was all consuming. I started to avoid mirrors, because every time I looked into one, I couldn't recognize myself. My reflection seemed different. The eyes stared back at me, cold and hollow, as if they belonged to someone else. I was losing my mind. The sixth letter arrived in the middle of the night. I didn't even have to open it. I could feel it in my bones, in the air around me. The weight of it, pressing down, suffocating me. I grabbed the envelope with shaking hands and tore it open, the paper inside feeling like sandpaper against my fingertips. The note was short, but it made my heart stop. It's time. The truth is right in front of you. I knew then that there was no escaping this. Whoever or whatever had been sending these letters was far from human. And it wasn't just messing with me, it was using me, pulling me into a web of madness where there was no way out. I felt like I was drowning, like I was suffocating in my own skin. I spent hours pacing my apartment, the walls closing in around me. I went through every letter again, desperately trying to piece it all together. And that's when it hit me. The letters weren't just warnings, they were steps. Each one leading me closer to a terrible truth I couldn't ignore. I suddenly remembered something I hadn't thought about in years, a trip I had taken, years ago, with a group of friends. We had gone to a cabin in the woods. It was supposed to be a fun weekend, but something happened there. Something I couldn't remember clearly, but it had been bad. Something wrong. The final letter was waiting for me the next morning, my hands shaking as I held it. You know what you've done, and now it's time to pay. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. All those warnings, the spilled coffee, the voice calling my name, the tapping at the window, they weren't about me. They were about something else, something much darker. I wasn't the one being hunted. I was the hunter. I had been the one to set it all in motion, years ago. The trip to the cabin had been no accident. I had done something there, something terrible, and I had erased it from my memory. But now, it had come back for me, not as a threat, but as a reckoning. The letters, the voices, the shadows, they were all part of it. A part of me, a part I had buried deep, hoping it would stay forgotten. But it never could. As I sat there, staring at the final letter, I realized I was no longer in control of my fate. I had become a part of the nightmare I'd been running from. The thing that had been tormenting me was me, my own dark reflection, finally breaking free. And it was too late to escape.